What is the best case scenario if Dame Lillard doesn't go to the Celtics?
Yeah, so anywhere but Miami, right? Because that would just help Miami sort of reload a little bit and be a threat. And we saw last year they didn't even need superstars to be in the mix. So for me, it comes down to keep them away from the Eastern Conference powers.
Well, Chris, there in the end, I guess you kind of saved yourself a little bit because you kind of overlooked one Eastern Conference power that could have traded for Dame Lillard. Yeah, that's the Milwaukee Bucks. The Blazers traded Lillard to the Bucks as part of a 3-team deal that also includes the Suns today. Portland will receive a package that partially includes Jrue Holiday, DeAndre Ayton, and 3 future first-round picks. Dame now heads to Milwaukee to play alongside Giannis. The move shaking up the Eastern Conference. Title odds have quickly changed. The Bucks started the day at plus 850, and they are now the favorites at plus 390. Quite the swing there. The Nuggets now have the second best odds at plus 475. Celtics dropped to third at plus 500. The Miami Heat's title odds have plummeted since the Dame trade was announced. They were around plus 1,000. They've dropped to plus 2,800 to 3,000, depending on where you look. So apparently the early numbers there were people assuming that Dame Lillard will end up alongside his buddy Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo. He will not. We got our Celtics insider Chris Forsberg here. We've got Gary Washburn of the Boston Globe with us as well. First of all, guys, and we'll start with Chris here in studio, just your reaction to this trade today and Dame Lillard going to Milwaukee.
NBA is back. Isn't it fun? Like, this is what I miss. I mean, I know, like, I enjoyed vacation and all that, but it is fun to have these sort of deals. And, like, look, the NBA always keeps you guessing, and everyone was just so sure he was going to go to South Beach and pair up with Jimmy Butler. I love Jimmy Butler coming online today and being like, NBA, you might need to look into a little tampering. It's so much fun. But, of course, it boils down to, like, look, Celtics and Bucks, they're the best of the East, and the road got a little bit more difficult for the Celtics to get back where they want to be. And, I can't wait. These games are going to be so much fun. Starts Thanksgiving Eve with those two teams, 4 meetings this year. I'm ready for one right now, Trenni.
Yeah, Gary, what did you first think when you heard the trade come across?
Well, I do think it's a blockbuster, and I do think it's a big trade, but I'm just not sure that this makes Milwaukee like the title favorite. I just don't. Like, you trade away Jrue Holiday, one of the best two-way guards in the NBA, a defensive ace, a guy obviously who made that big steal to clinch the game in Boston a couple years ago, just a guy who's a big money, big game player for Damian Lillard, who can score with the best of them, but doesn't play very good defense. It makes Milwaukee older. Milwaukee also gave up Grayson Allen. So this puts a lot of pressure on Giannis and a team that's particularly old. Remember, they got both Lopez twins. They're 35. You got Giannis is 28. Middleton's 32. This is an old team, so it's better work out this year. But I'm not certain that they're so much better than they were yesterday.
Yeah, really, the window in Milwaukee right now is about 2 years, because after that, things get real dicey because Giannis is up and then Dame only gets older and he gets paid a lot of money. All right, we want you to join this conversation about the biggest story of the day. After the Lillard trade, who is the team to beat in the Eastern Conference? Is it the Bucks? A lot of you still think it is the Celtics, or is it the Heat? You can go and vote in our poll by going to NBCSportsBoston.com/early edition.
We put the Heat in that poll?
Scan the QR code as well. I mean, truthfully though, who else would you put in there? The 76ers, they seem to be a mess too right now.
At least they have some superstars that should eventually play there, and they got Embiid. At least that gives them a chance. Like, the Heat always sort of fester. The funniest outcome of this whole thing though, Trenni, would be if we get to the Eastern Conference semifinals and the Heat with Jimmy Butler and some ragtag group take down Milwaukee and kind of get their revenge. But that's way down the road. I'm not thinking about that. But to Gary's point about are the Bucks that much better? Because obviously we see the odds vaulting and everything like that. I do think, I don't know how you stop a Dame Giannis pick and roll. That is going to put all the pressure on every defense in the world. The Celtics defense, probably not as good as it was a year ago if you're thinking with Marcus Smart now departed, but we'll see. That's part of the unknown for me. I think the Celtics are still right there with them. They should still feel confident in the group they have. And yet, undeniably, the top-level talent on the Bucks get better, and that makes them that much more serious of a contender. You already had Giannis, and now you're adding another top 10 guy. And I don't know how long Lillard is going to be a top 10 guy, and you're going to be able to go at him defensively, and I get all those things. But, man, they could score a ton of points, and they got enough parts around it to be really, really good. Now there's a little bit of mystery about every team because of the moves they made this offseason, and I need to see it.
So, Gare, you know, as Chris just said, that just reiterated what you said, that you don't necessarily think this catapults the Bucks to the top. So I'm assuming you think the Celtics are still sort of there. But with this move that the Bucks made, do you feel like maybe the Celtics need a counterpunch? I don't know, maybe go after a guy like a Jrue Holiday, shore up that defense. Because much like, you know, you mentioned all the questions you have about whether or not it's going to work out in Milwaukee, I think some of those same types of questions exist in Boston. Is Malcolm Brogdon going to be happy and be able to play here? Is Kristaps Porzingis going to be healthy? Like, a lot is riding on Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown to sort of figure it out and carry this team as well.
Well, Trenni, in a perfect world, you would have the Celtics moving Brogdon to Portland and a bunch of draft picks for Holiday, who can fill the point guard role, move Derek White to a more comfortable position coming off the bench or as a two guard or whatever you want to put Derek White, and you can just, and then you have a dynamic team. It all depends on what Portland would ask for. Portland's going very young. Obviously, they're in complete rebuild mode under Coach Chauncey Billups. So they don't, obviously, they're going to try to move Holiday. It could be by the trade deadline. It's the final year of his deal. He makes $25 million. That's not a difficult salary to match up. I mean, you can add Brogdon and another piece to that, but you would have to probably go in 2 to 3 first-round picks to make that happen, or maybe 2, since he's has an expiring contract. That would be kind of your best case scenario for the Celtics here. Is like, let's get a guy who was just moved by Milwaukee to beat Milwaukee. And I just think Jrue Holiday is a dog. He is a great player. We've seen him burn the Celtics time after time over the last 4 or 5 years since he came over from New Orleans. So I think if you're Brad Stevens, you pick up the phone and go, okay, what would it take? And then see what Portland's talking about and whether they're interested in moving him now or whether they're going to wait to the trade deadline.
Yeah, Chris, you got to make the phone call, right? Like, even if, come on, really?
So, look, I love Jrue Holiday. It's just the 34.9, and then there's a trade kicker in there as well. You're looking at Malcolm Brogdon. I'm not even going to say Rob Williams because I'm going to get angry. Like, either that or Al Horford, and then all the picks, all for someone who's an expiring deal. Like, there's no long-term way to keep Jrue Holiday as part of this core. This is part of the reason you're trying to get off of Malcolm Brogdon before next summer, because you just can't carry $22 million in and keep your new big three long-term. And so ultimately, I don't see how they add another lofty salary like that. The fact that it is expiring is somewhat intriguing, but the cost would have to be super low, and I'm certainly not ready to give up someone like a Robert Williams in that scenario, or young talent, or even multiple draft picks.
But what if it was Al Horford?
I just can't see the Celtics doing Al like that. Like, you don't bring him back and...
But, I mean, not to be like a jerk, but should it matter? Like, shouldn't the most important thing, I'm not saying you shouldn't treat people well, because you should.
Spoken like someone from Milwaukee who just watched Jrue Holiday get kicked to the curb.
Well, no, I'm just saying but it's not personal, it's business. And what's best for business is to put Al Horford in a trade for Jrue Holiday, and that makes you better and puts you nose to nose with the Bucks. Like, I love Al. Everybody loves Al here, but it's not about our heart. It's about winning a title.
Who's defending Giannis in a playoff series? So look, I think
Porzingis.
Someone whispered in your ear, but yes.
No, I came up with it on my own.
So I do think Kristaps can help you defensively in that situation, but Al has been sort of that mysterious, secretly good. It makes no sense that at this age that he's been as good as he has against Giannis. And I know that's going to evaporate at some point, but I think when I'm looking at the roster right now, one of the deficiencies has got to be, like, are all those guys staying healthy? I think you need all 3 of those bigs on the roster. There's going to be I feel pretty confident there will be a Malcolm Brogdon trade eventually. I think it'll be for someone who's, more tenable long-term and who still helps this core. And I think the Celtics just going to figure out, like, what is the need right now? We can all sit here and say, oh, maybe it's point guard or it's big man or whatever. I got no clue. Like, let's see it out there, and then we can decide what they need to go do.
For the record, sometimes people do whisper things in my ear. That was not one of the times. I just couldn't think of it in the moment. I remember it myself. All right, Gary Washburn from the Boston Globe, thanks very much for joining the conversation. We appreciate it. Chris, you're dead to me.